Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another riveting lecture starring me, Mr. Ryan. Today we're going to be talking about interest groups. Again, I know we've been talking about interest groups all year, but we're going to get more specific. Yay! Always a good time to get more specific and learn some vocab. So, let's get started. Just as a review, what are interest groups? They are groups that are interested in stuff. Really great definition. When you are interested in things, you tend to gravitate toward people that also are interested in those things. And if there are laws concerning those things, then you generally want to band together with other people who like the things that you like and change the laws regarding those things. And that's what an interest group does. They link people with the government by bringing their interests together to do all sorts of various things, from drafting legislation to filing amicus curiae briefs to donating lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money. Lots of money. God, I love money. Remember that this is basically the entire idea behind pluralist democracy. I know we haven't talked about those three types of democracy in a real long time, but this is a great time to review it. So close to the test. So, not participatory, not elite, but pluralist democracy when factions compete towards their own interests to balance each other out. Their main thing that interest groups do is what we call lobbying. It's called lobbying because it's an old British term where there's a lobby outside Parliament and a bunch of people would just try and talk to parliamentary members and be like, hey, you should pass blank. Please, me lord, pass me a law. Something like that. I don't know. That's probably not like that. So it's applying some kind of pressure, whether or not that's financial pressure, that's usually the one that they use, or societal pressure, or there's all sorts of different ways that they can exert influence. In the upper right-hand corner there's several different strategies that lobbyists can use in order to exert their influence on policy making. Down in the lower right there is my family. Hey, what's up? On the left is my brother Landon. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Landon. Woo! My nephew, Jack, and my sister-in-law, Katie. The reason that picture's there is not just because I was like, oh my gosh, look at my nephew on his 6th birthday with all the dinosaurs. It's because my sister-in-law, Katie, does a lot of positive work, has done a lot of positive work with a bunch of nonprofit organizations and with the Dignity Health Group here in Nevada. And they just recently moved to Colorado, where she's working with the Colorado legislature as a lobbyist. So please don't assume that all lobbyists are automatically evil, because I have a lobbyist in the family. Thanks. She's a nice lady. Anyway, that's my nephew Jack Ryan. If you read Tom Clancy, is Tom Clancy the guy that has Jack Ryan? I don't remember. He's named after a CIA agent from The Hunt for Red October. Anyway, that's my family. The most common way lobbyists deal with things is through donating money. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But they also do other things like form policy, draft legislation, testify as experts, all sorts of different things. Boop. There are some drawbacks to the prevalence of interest groups. Because there's so much money involved, there can be the idea that politicians are being bought and sold. But of course, the politicians in Washington, D.C. have a lot more integrity than that. It's totally not true. It's great times. There's lots of opportunity for corruption with that kinds of money. There are some great quotes in your book about how politicians feel about interest groups and their lobbying and what that does to American society. interest groups will take a lot of the individualism and autonomy out of the political process by doing things like giving their members pre-written messages to try and convince Congress people to do stuff. If you want to watch a very, very good movie, these clips on the right are from a film called Thank You for Smoking. I can't actually tell you to watch it because it's rated R, but you should watch it. You guys are all 17. Watch it. The school does not endorse the movie, but it's a good movie. You should check it out. One of the things that is really prevalent in interest groups is that there's an upper class bias. So there's not really these opportunities available for people without money. We'll get into why that is in just a minute. But generally, the people who are in interest groups have more time and money and can influence government more than people who don't have that time or money. And because of interest groups wanting their interests fulfilled, there's a lot of misinformation or hiding truths. Think tanks are these big organizations that do research and tell politicians kind of what research shows concerning whatever their interest might be. And there's a big fight between the Human Rights Watch and the Heritage Foundation. The Human Rights Watch is a left-wing think tank, whereas the Heritage Foundation is a conservative think tank. And they got really mad at each other for the old misinformation because they're only going to present information that benefits whatever their interest is and maybe conceal some information that, might not be very nice for them. Boop. All right. Some ways that they exert their influence. One of the ways is through what's called issue networks. Issue networks are really similar to another term that we learned called iron triangles. Hopefully you guys remember iron triangles. It seems to come up all the time. So this is similar to an iron triangle, but not as connected to government. So this is just large groups of interest groups that are interrelated. So whereas an iron triangle is an interest group, a federal bureaucracy or a federal agency and Congress in this kind of mutually beneficial triangle, issue networks are kind of the same thing, but just interest groups. So they might be united on a specific issue and pool their numbers together to vote in a certain way on specific issues. And a lot of the time you see, this is one of the best ways that you can see a positive part of lobbying is because you get to see lots of interest groups that would normally not be friendly with one another actually agree on certain things and reach compromises that you wouldn't. So, for example, if you have a religious institution and a civic institution talking about a social safety net, lots of religions are really big on charity, and so civic institutions are really big on providing a social safety net for those who need it. And so they might agree to push legislation for that specific topic, despite the fact that they might fundamentally disagree on other things like abortion, that kind of stuff. Direct lobbying is probably the other most common form of lobbying. In fact, it's probably the most common form of lobbying, but I wanted to mention issue networks first because they're kind of neat. But direct lobbying is just like talking to legislators, talking to them with your mouth, saying, hey, I'll give you a cool Porsche if you vote for something. Directly with those people or encouraging people to talk to legislators or elected officials is another form of direct lobbying. This ad on the right, I don't know if you guys watch television. I know I don't. But sometimes I watch the morning news, but this ad plays all the time. And it's an example of direct lobbying, but it's also an example of how interest groups can mislead a whole lot of people. So let's take a look at this ad about electric cars. Hopefully it picks up the sound.
We're all different.
We don't all live in cities,
But President Biden's EPA is rushing to ban new gas-powered cars,
even though some of us drive long distances.
live too far from a charger.
Or can't afford an expensive electric vehicle.
Call President Biden.
Tell him to stop his EPA's car ban.
Government policy can't just work for some of us.
It should work for all of us.
Learn more at don'tbanourcars.com. Paid for by American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers.
That fast part at the end is pretty telling. See where it says paid for by American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers? I wonder if they might have a vested interest in not liking electric vehicles. There is not a ban on gas-powered vehicles. It's not a thing that exists. The EPA does encourage people to buy electric vehicles, and there are incentives to do so, but there's absolutely not a ban on gas vehicles. And I'm not sure why the ad says that. Well, I do know why the ad says that. It's because this is a pack for fossil fuels, and they want you to use fossil fuels so they get money. I like money, as you should too. Most important thing in the world. They might have groups or experts from their interest group appear on TV to advocate for something. A lot of them write op-ed articles, opinion editorial articles. Newspapers will have a whole editorial section where you can read about these types of specific issues. And a lot of the time, interest groups are the ones that funnel those kind of opinion pieces to papers. No. Nope. Nope. There we go. Another way to exert influence is legislation. That's how we get laws done. We write and pass legislation. And we know that it's not just legislators who can write legislation. They're the ones that get it passed. They're the ones that debate it. But interest groups are totally able to draft legislation and be like, hey, check out this bill I wrote. It would be cool if you would introduce it to Congress. And then Matt Gaetz might be like, well, I think I might. As long as you wet the whistle a little bit and give me some money or something. I don't know. That's probably how he talks. Anyway, so they'll present it to the Congress people, be like, hey, this is why this is a good law. Here's some studies we've done, things like that. There are two different types of strategies when it comes to exerting influence. There's insider strategies and outsider strategies. Insider strategies are the ones that involve how close you are with government. So my sister-in-law would be utilizing an insider strategy because she's actually at the Colorado legislature working closely with their state assembly to draft bills. An outsider strategy doesn't really require close access with elected officials, and so it can operate outside of like the legislature and the state government itself. One of the biggest interest groups in the country is the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. And if you can imagine from the name, they're really interested in the protection of civil liberties. And their favorite outsider strategy is lawsuits. They love suing people a lot. Or not necessarily suing people, but maybe representing people in lawsuits that concern civil liberties. This is from the ACLU's website right here. They have an entire section of their website dedicated to court cases that they are involved in. And you can see right here that they have 1,402 court cases. That's like current court cases for civil liberties. And you can see all of them. You can filter them by which civil liberty they deal with. It's incredible. Also, any kind of like public drive, protest, something like that you do, that's going to be an outsider strategy. If you're not working directly with the government, you're an outsider. We don't like those outsiders. Unless they're Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. There's one student in the class that will get that. Boop. Maybe more. Who knows? Nonprofit organizations are some of the most influential of interest groups. the way that we classify nonprofit organizations is their tax status, which is kind of weird, but it is. Nonprofit organizations have some level of tax exempt status, and depending on what kind of organization they are, depends on or changes what they can actively do and how much they pay in taxes. Usually nothing. A 501c3 is like a full tax exempt charity. This is going to be things like churches and charities, stuff like that. They enjoy full tax exemption, and so there's a big conflict of interest if they started donating a bunch of money to politics, because that's what the tax exemption is supposed to be for. But they can't directly lobby government officials or donate to campaigns, but they can talk to their constituents and be like, hey, this is what we believe. Maybe you should vote that way. That might be a good idea. 501c4 organizations are a little bit different. They can lobby and campaign for specific candidates, but they have a cap on their ability to donate. I want to say that the cap is half their earnings. They can't exceed half their earnings. So it's not that gnarly a cap. A lot of the time, the nonprofit organizations and government will hire experts to further the causes of interest groups. The two guys here at the bottom, you might have seen if you followed the first Trump impeachment trial. Both of these guys are constitutional scholars. I think both of them are Harvard Law graduates. I think they might be. At least one of them is. Guy on the left there is Jonathan Turley, Professor Jonathan Turley, who is a very distinguished and well-respected constitutional scholar. He tends to be requested by conservative groups for his expert testimony concerning the Constitution. Feller on the right, his name is Noah Feldman, also a constitutional law scholar, also a professor, and he also testifies about constitutional law and things like that. So they might do research to give to the public or to Congress or whoever is being lobbied, and they can testify on behalf of interest groups based on their expertise. Oh, hey, the American Cancer Society. That's a 501c4 organization, I think. Because I think they're a public charity. Don't quote me on that. I suppose I could look it up. American Cancer Society 501. Oh, they're a C3. My bad. Yeah, I guess because they're a private charity. My bad. Yeah, they're a 501c3 organization, tax exempt. All this stuff totally easy to find on the internet. Endorsing political candidates is a fantastic way to get support for whatever you're interested in. A lot of interest groups will follow candidates for local, state, and federal office very closely and let people know how to vote on them. Unions often send out cards to their union members saying, yo, we think you should vote for the following people. These are the pro-union people. This is how we think you should vote on ballot initiatives, which we'll get into later. But all that kind of stuff. The NRA is very, very notorious for this, the National Rifle Association. They will go through every single candidate in every single election and grade them on their support for gun rights. So you can see on this particular one, this is a Florida report card, and in the statewide election for governor, they give an A rating and a full NRA endorsement to Ron DeSantis for his gun stuff. Good old Meatball Ron. I'm sad that Meatball Ron is the name that stuck and not Ron DeSanctimonious. That one was way more fun. I liked that one. Grassroots campaigning is a way to get a lot of people involved in stuff. In fact, that is basically the definition of grassroots campaigning, is extending roots down into like the I don't want to say the bottom of the society, but that's like where the roots go. That's where everything happens, is public opinion. So influencing public opinion at the roots of an issue and mobilizing those people to exert as much influence as they possibly can, either by incessantly calling them, sending letters on behalf of the interest group out to as many people as possible to try and convince them. It might be that jerk that's outside the DMV going, "Hey, do you want to sign my petition?" "I just want to register my car, dude." But you gotta have to deal with that guy. Social media stuff, billboards. You might have seen this billboard around town from the interest group Jew Belong. They are if you can imagine this, Jewish interest group, a pro-Israel, anti-Semitism interest group, and they have billboards all around town concerning anti-Semitism and the war in Gaza. So all sorts of stuff like that. Social media is especially good for grassroots campaigning. Well, kinda. Like at the bottom level, for raising awareness, you might see people like change their little icon or their face to something for a raise awareness. So they think they're doing a whole bunch by posting on social media, but they're not. But at least it gets knowledge out, I suppose. So there's a debate on whether or not social media actually has a good impact on whether or not things happen. Anyway, types. Lots of types of interest groups. A whole lot of these came out of the progressive era. The best era of United States history, I think. Most interesting, not best. There was a lot of horrible things happening, which is why they had to have the progressive era. But there's probably an interest group for anything that you want. Are you interested in something? There's probably an interest group for you. Are you not interested in anything? There's probably an interest group for that. Just a nihilist, nothing matters group. That'll be perfect for you. So, it's great. If you work in a union, every single labor union is an interest group. So whether or not it's a big major one like the AFL-CIO or the Teamsters or anything like that, all of those are interest groups that are going to fight with the interest of their particular labor in mind. Business associations, so depending on what kind of business you own or are a part of, you might have an interest group. National Association of Manufacturers are, check this out, manufacturers that lobby Congress on behalf of manufacturing. What do you mean we can't send it to China and make kids do it? There's a lot of child labor in China. It sucks. Social movements are a really good one. So depending on what kind of social studies you're interested in, you might have something like that. The Anti-Defamation League, the ACLU, are both really prominent social movements for individual liberties. Civil rights, there's all sorts of different civil rights organizations. Probably the most well-known in America is the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The Sierra Club, very influential environmental interest group. If you buy stuff, you can join a consumers union. If there's a single issue that you like, hey, I like guns, join the NRA. If you don't like drinking, it used to be that you could join the Women's Christian Temperance Union. I don't think the Women's Christian Temperance Union exists anymore. Maybe it does. Let's find out. Does the Women's Christian Temperance Union still exist? Women's Christian Temperance Union still exist? Apparently it does. Whoa. So anyway, you just joined the Women's Christian Temperance Union. They still exist. MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. If you have an opinion on abortion, I can guarantee if you are interested or not interested in anything, there is something for you. There are there are a lot more than two types of interest groups, but we're going to separate them even further into two subsections. The ones that we've been talking about, things like the NRA or labor unions, things like that, are what we call special interest groups. They're called special interest groups because they have a form of special membership. You pay dues to become a member of that group. And that group's mission is solely to improve things for that special group. And that's it. There's also public interest groups, which don't have things like dues or individualized messages. They're more concerned with the overall well-being of humanity, voters, people in the country. It's way more broad. They might lobby to have fundamental government changes that affect literally the entire citizenry. The reason that we have the 26th Amendment, which one's the 26th Amendment? It's 18-year-olds can vote, is because of public interest groups. Common Cause and Public Citizen are two of the biggest public interest groups, but they're the ones that get major government processes changed. Boop. Hey, let's separate interest groups into even more categories. There's so many. And then we have institutional groups. Depending on what type of institution you belong to, you have a different type of group. For example, if your institution is a government one, then there are intergovernmental interest groups you can join. For example, if someday you want to run to be the governor of Nevada, you might join the National Governors Association, where all the governors get together and talk about governor stuff. You can be all like, hey, I'm the governor of Nevada. Who wants to meet the mob? And everyone will say, we already know the Culinary Union. That's a joke. The Culinary Union's not actually the mob. So a lot of people liken the Culinary Union to the mob, but they're not. If you're mayor, hey, you could join the Conference of Mayors. That's fantastic. So any government type folks. If you have a profession, you can join an association that deals with rights for that profession. For example, the American Bar Association is the association of judges and lawyers who grade Supreme Court justices on whether or not they're fit to serve. They can receive one of three qualifications. This is a bit of review. Hopefully you remember this. They can be not qualified, qualified, or well qualified. Every single justice on the Supreme Court is, of course, well qualified. Except for one. I wonder which one it is. It's Clarence Thomas. It's always Clarence Thomas. Yeah. What's next? Corporations. Corporations are corporations. They do corporation stuff. This is where you get your think tanks, your big conservative think tanks, your big liberal conservative, your big liberal think tanks. They're funded by corporations. I think the Heritage Foundation is funded by the Koch brothers. Don't quote me on that, but I think they might be. But they do lots of research into some kind of thing that will further the agenda of that corporation. The Economic Policy Institute is a similar think tank on the left. So, right and left stuff. Boom! Why join an interest group? There are a couple of different reasons, some of which you might find more enticing if you are a human who feels emotions, and some that you might like more if you like getting actual things. The first type of incentives are called purposive incentives, ones that give you purpose, gives you some kind of philosophical satisfaction, like you have some sort of conscience and you're like, I'm helping society by doing that. Given that I'm completely dead inside, I do not understand this one. But maybe that's important to some people. So the idea that you're helping some kind of cause that you're interested in is in and of itself an incentive to join an interest group. Solidary incentives are like community building incentives. You might want to make friends. Being around people that think the same thing that you do is pretty neat. You can talk about that thing, whatever it might be. Like when me and my 40-year-old friends get together and we talk about Pokemon, that's depressing. But hey, it's fantastic. And then, of course, there's the ones that really matter. Material incentives. When you're joining these groups, a lot of the time, there's usually members who are just members and members who pay dues to be a member of that. And those who pay dues get special incentives. Like I used to be a member of the Nevada chapter of the National Education Association. And being a due-paying member there, for some reason, got you all these incentives for going to theme parks. You could go and be like, hello, I would like severely discounted theme park tickets. We go, here you go. And I was like, I'm here for legal representation. They're like, no, we'll give you Disneyland tickets instead. So do that instead. As is the case with the other stuff we're talking about, there are problems with this. Dues cost money. Some people don't have money. There's an upper class bias that's kind of ingrained into this whole situation. So if you can't afford the dues, you don't get those incentives. There are some folks who are members without paying the dues. We call those free riders. And if there are too many free riders, then small interest groups can lose all their money because they need to survive on donations from people to live. So if too many people aren't paying their dues, then your interest group might not exist because, you got to have money. Money's the most important thing in the world. Anyway, the AARP, the American Association of Retired Persons, I think, they have all sorts of member benefits. They have a whole member benefits page that you can take a look at. So if you're old, if you suddenly become old, join that interest group, get some benefits. Interest groups have incredible pull on parties, not just for legislation and things like that, but like philosophically as well. So if certain interest groups gain enough influence, they can actually change the ideology of their respective parties. This has happened to both parties with several interest groups. So one of the big groups that affected the Republican Party was the Stop ERA group. That whole thing's an acronym. I don't remember what STOP stands for. But ERA is the Equal Rights Amendment. There was a large contingent of women who were against the Equal Rights Amendment for women. So while Republicans initially supported the ERA, the Stop ERA group got so much influence and had so much pull on the Republican Party that the Republican Party pulled to the right even farther than they already were and made them not support the ERA, which has yet to be passed. Same thing with the Democrats. Post-Civil War Democrats, they're no longer the party of slavery. We have interest groups like the NAACP trying to fight for civil rights, and they start pulling the Democratic Party farther to the left, like way farther to the left, given that they were on the right before. So their work with anti-segregation policies pulled the Democratic Party to the left, and they had incredible sway in getting civil rights legislation passed for, 100 years. Same thing with the Sierra Club. Ralph Nader, Jill Stein, the Green Party in general, are the members of the Sierra Club, really put environmental focus on the forefront of the Democratic Party and pulled their policies to the left. Lots of government interference in stopping pollution and fossil fuels, things like that. So because the Sierra Club had that pull, the parties had to change. You might recognize this picture down here. Anyone know what that event is? Hey, say it out loud. Wake up your family. We've tried to fight the inherent corruption that is in lobbying and interest groups. Maybe to some kind of success, but we'll talk a little bit. Excuse me, sorry. We'll talk a little bit about what those efforts have been. The main one is called HLOGA. I want to say it like an acronym. HLOGA, Honest Leadership and Open Government Act is what it was called. So that's an adorable name coming from the government. But they started setting these rules on lobbying to try and prevent corruption. Things like direct gifting to Congress people, reporting on donations, especially donations of a certain size, stopping donations of a certain size. Big asterisk on that one. We'll get to that in the next lecture. But probably the big thing that came out of the HLOGA is the reporting of bundling. Bundling is the act of taking donations from multiple sources and funneling it into like a single candidate. And that is a crime. Well, if you do it in excess of $15,000. Wink. I put a wink there because there's got to be a way around that, man. Of course there is. But it's kind of interesting to see the effects of HLOGA implementation. You can see that on this line we have a trend where we're getting more and more lobbyists, more and more lobbyists, more and more lobbyists. We implement HLOGA and we have a nice little gradual lobbyists are going down. We don't have as many people directly influencing government like that. There's also this thing called the revolving door. When Congress people lose or retire, they're considered prime candidates for lobbyists because they already have an in with everybody in Congress. And a huge portion of former Congress people become incredibly high-paid lobbyists for specific interest groups. And they have a huge amount of influence with the people already in the chamber since they worked with those people in the chamber. They get a ton of money for this. And so the money that's involved in the politics is staggering. And the amount of just kind of inside this bubble of government, there's just so many career politicians who have been in the same place doing the same thing. Like these numbers come from your book. As of 2019, 356 former members of Congress are now serving as registered lobbyists. This is how many people in each chamber become lobbyists after they leave Congress, because it's incredibly lucrative and they get a staggering amount of power. So that is closing that door, making it less attractive for that kind of revolving door to exist, is one of the goals of the HLOGA and other such legislation. Oh, yeah, that's it. Next time, we're going to talk about elections and campaigns. In fact, we might just bundle all of them together. Who knows? Elections, campaigns, and the media are all we have left. And all three of those things are really closely related. We just need to get some kind of basic vocab for stuff. If you have any questions about any of the things that are in this video, please let me know. Shoot me an email. I would prefer that to a Moodle message. Text message would be fine on my Google Voice number. You guys have that. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. Find an interest group. Join it. And you too can influence government. Maybe not quite as much as a former congressperson, but hey, you could run for Congress. Why don't you just do that instead? All right, bye. Where's the button? Peace.